Zoom. All right, perfect. So we can get this all started. So Chinese medicine. Traditional Chinese medicine has been practiced forever. There has even been, I believe it's called The Emperor's Yellow. I forget the full name, but I will find it for you. But this book was basically a depiction on Chinese medicine, how it worked, and why it worked. And the reason I believe that I got so strongly attached to Chinese medicine is because it's literally giving you a map of your body to help you understand where that energetic congestion is. One thing you'll never hear me say, I know you've done chakras and all that other stuff, you're never going to hear me say energy is blocked. Okay. I will never say that because it's not blocked. It's just, it's not flowing as freely in a space. I tend to notice if you tell somebody they have an energy blockage, they're going to take that in and think that they're blocked, period. And then it's going to be harder to get them out of that mind frame. So anytime I talk about energy, even when someone tells me about a physical injury, I'll just say, okay, so energy is not moving as freely in there. So we got to loosen up what's around to release what's in the middle. And people are like, well, yeah, that makes sense. Well, of course. I know in Hatha and regular yoga, we're going to tell you that all problems start out here first, and then they work their way internally eventually. And in Chinese medicine, they believe that a little, but they also believe that something can be internal and then go outward as well. So they believe in both ways. So what they're saying is someone can come in and say, my lungs have been bothering me. Okay, well, the lungs are bothering them because they just went to a space and maybe there was mold, allergies, things like that. Now, obviously something's wrong with the ecosystem in your body that it's not, your lungs aren't able to filter through that area. So that I would call an environmental attachment. So that's something that happened because of the environment. And we're going to stick with the lungs, so I'll just stick with one organ. But lungs can also, we'll go deeply into this because that's going to lead me into my pathway for our first element, but the lungs are associated with grief. So I like to tell people a lot, you know people, I'm sure you do, with chronic lung issues or people who are constant smokers of any type. Cigarettes, and we all know people smoke their weed and things like that as well. So what that is doing is that is an outside element that was caused by stress, an emotional thing. Think about why people get attached to marijuana, cigarettes, things like that. And I'm only using that as an example because, or a vape, whatever people use. Now, there is a good, strong possibility when someone is addicted to something to covering up their lungs, it's attached to a lot of grief in their life. Whether it's people giving them grief, them giving grief to themselves, them staying in a grieving mode, meaning like everything is kind of like, oh, well is me, or I feel isolated type thing. So in Chinese medicine, they're going to tell you it can start as an emotion and work its way in, or it can start physically and then become emotional. So they can say it goes both ways. So it's a little different than the koshas. So I know with the koshas, you know, you're peeling the layer to get to the bliss, and that's great. And they do believe in that as well, but they also believe the opposite. Whew. Take my glasses off when I'm about to read. Da, 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 da. Trust me, I feel for you this morning because I had a very similar experience, and I'll tell you, the full moon makes a lot of people crazy.
Yeah.
I love when people are like, oh, I don't believe in that, and then I watch their personalities around the full moon, and I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't believe it at all. Doesn't seem to affect you at all. All right. There it is. The Yellow Emperor's Classic of Internal Medicine. I will actually even make sure I will snap a picture actually right now while we're on the phone, so you can have.
Oh, I take my phone. I'll just be back. 1 second.
Oh, sure. All right, let's edit this. Edit. All right.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. This way you can have it in front of you. It's very brief, but I want to make sure you have the name of the book because this is the actual, it's like the Bible of the Chinese medicine. And I love it. All right. You got my WhatsApp? Yes, I did. There we go. All right, here it comes.
Yeah.
So this book has been updated. It's been modified. It's a little different than a lot of the traditional yoga books. I love traditional yoga books because they're like the hardcore from the beginning. That's just their beliefs and that's it. We haven't done a lot of updating. Now, I'm not going to say there's a ton of updating in this book, but if they find something new, they're happy to put it out and then put in the new information here. So basically, yin and yang were conceived as one entity that both together were ever present. So for example, light turns into darkness, and then day changes to night, spring turns to summer, and summer into fall. So it's just saying that there's always going to be constant change that's going to be able to create balance in our environment and within ourselves. So, and we kind of know this from before. I think I sent the chart last night as well, but thinking of what yin and yang represent. So you have your yin, which is like the cloudy, the shady, more moon, female. I know the word death is in there, but it just means that, you know, we're able to kill off parts of ourselves, doesn't mean actual death. And they also have evil and ugly. So they're just saying that, you know, with females, I know we all hear this. When we get mad and we get bitter, we can get vindictive. Men are not like that at all. They're like, what's the problem? And half the time they don't even know what the problem is. And then we get all, wah! So that's all that it means about evil and ugly. It doesn't mean we're absolutely evil. It just means that we can get a little ugly that can be represented to someone as that's mean. We'll say mean instead of evil.
Okay.
We'll say mean. But it's like the negative element. Now, I get this all the time. We're the negative element. No, it just means the negative charged things.
Yes.
Think about it that way. So we have like negative ions that are in the environment and positive ions. And if you know anything about those type of things, they're always going to recommend that we have more negative ions in our space. And the way to do that is to be out in the fresh air, be by running water, the ocean, things like that. So think about the places you feel most peaceful. Those are all yin elements. So it's not meaning negativity. It's meaning those spaces where you can feel neutral and just be able to release. Then you have your yang, which is going to be the opposite. So more fiery, more sun. There's a lot of dryness associated with yang as well. So if you're really fired up, we got to give ourselves some water. So right there, that just shows you a balance of yin and yang right there. So yang when you're very young, you get really, like you're running around all the time. So you're very expansive. You're like floating around everywhere. And you can feel like you're higher than people. So people who are super fiery can tend to have what we call a quote unquote attitude sometimes. To us, it's not an attitude, it's their energy. They're just very, and like if you're very yin, you could be like, oh, I hurt their feelings, or ooh, they're a little much for me. So it's finding that balance on where to connect with someone. And it also says, as yang is the good and beautiful. I think all that truly represents is saying that when you are in a fire and you have a lot of light in you, think about it this way. I actually have people say this to me all the time when they meet me. They're like, oh my gosh, I just feel so good when I'm around you. Like your energy, That's the young energy in me. I have a good energy inside, and it represents to people the fire burning within me comes out looking like beauty. That's all it's going to kind of say, because if you're in a yin state all the time, you're more inward, you're a lot more quiet. And then, like I said, it can lead to those lower vibrations that are known as depression.
Yeah.
So it's just good to know that whatever you have going on with you, there is an opposite. It's okay to stay in the one side for a little, but then you got to pull something in to keep that balance. This is completely related to the meridians. So Chinese medicine, I know you've probably seen the crazy picture before where maybe, let me see if I have it actually while we're talking. There's another picture besides what I've shown you with the energetic pathways. So you have your meridians, and they definitely are a particular type of map. But then, oh, I think I do have it. Let's see. In here. So they're the direct mapway that we use, but because of what the inner mapway really truly looks like, the issue is what I've said yesterday as well. If you're off in one place energetically, you're going to throw your energetic map off a little. So if you keep ignoring things or don't think that that's part of it, so let me get this into focus. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
That's a person.
Oh,
And that's all of the energetic pathways. It's crazy
wow.
looking, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So all this is representing is energetically, it's like the energy of fascia. So you have your physical fascia that connects everything. And if your fascia pulls here, it's going to pull other things out of balance a little. Same with the energetic pathways. So if there's congestion in one place, it's going to tend to pull it into others. But the great thing about this with the Chinese medicine is if you can pinpoint where it started or where it's most needed, then we can kind of look at where the area is. And then you can look at the simpler charts of what I sent you yesterday, the meridian pathways. This is exactly what traditional Chinese medicine people use to help you heal. First thing they'll do is have you sit down. And a traditional Chinese medicine will come in, a practitioner will come in. My experience is very similar to others. So they have you sit down, they make you stick out your tongue, they check your tongue, and what they're looking for to see if your tongue is dry, if there's like little wrinkles around the side of the tongue, if there's redness on the tongue. It's called tongue diagnosis.
Yeah.
So the first thing they do is check that out. Then they can see what's going on internally, even if you're not dry and you've got too much moisture in your body. So just right there, they have an idea of what your internal ecosystem is doing. Hot, dry, cold, wet, whatever it is going on inside. Once they have that down, they can decide what is going to, so just even to use, if you're really dry, we need some water. So they're going to be like, all right, you're going to see, you seemed out of balance in your fire, because if you have too much fire, it's going to dry you out. So we need to bring some water in. Cool. Metal is another one you can bring in, and that is also like a cooling factor as well. But if they're dry and still have some moisture in the body. So this is something they get really into detail with you about. Now, you don't need to know all of this. It's all written down for you, so you can always go back and look. This is actually a very intense type of medicine for a lot of people. If you've never worked with it or anything, I get a lot of feedback when people are like, this was a lot. And I'm like, that's great. Now you can read it and review it as much as you want and get it down however you're going to get it. I learned Chinese medicine probably 8 years ago, and I've used it in my daily life. And it is, me personally, most of the students will vouch for me on this. It is what healed me. I tried everything. Chinese medicine was what worked for me. Now, you have 5 different elements, and there's 2 different theories in the elements. So you have water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. Those are the 5 elements in Chinese medicine. So it's a little different than other elements because a lot of elemental people don't use metal. They use like ether or space and things like that. But those are the 5 elements, and wood. Wood is not something that people use a lot as well. So metal and wood is what makes Chinese medicine a little different than other type of elemental medicine. They have 2 different types of studying when it comes to this. So they have a creative or governing process. I'm gonna take pictures while I'm talking to you. So they have a creative or a generating process. Now what this means is this is more of like the mother is here and the next step is gonna be the child. That's the way they look at it. So it's like a nourishing type cycle. So they call it the creates and generates cycle. There we go. You only need to see the chart. The other verbiage is not important.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
So all it's going to say to you is that water creates or generates wood because rain nourishes trees. So the rain comes down and then trees are able to grow. Then you come into, so once the water grows the wood, then wood is going to create fire. So burning wood is going to generate fire. Then the fire is going to create earth. So basically the fire takes down the tree takes all of its nutrients, it goes back into the soil. Then earth creates metal. So metal is mined from the earth. So this is saying, so if we have anything that burns away and you put nutrients in the soil, this is a lot of fun science. If you put extra nutrients into places, minerals come out, or metals, or anything else. Then metal is going to create water, meaning that water condenses on the metal. So think about like if you go out to a car or something and the raid beadlets are all over the place. So this is the kind of cycle that they use for a generating and nourishing. So if you have a wood imbalance, they would say, I'm going to bring more water in there to nourish the wood. That's one way they could diagnose you or work within your energetic map of your body. So that is called the generating cycle, so mother to child. Then they also have what we call, there we go. I'm like, ooh, getting too many shadows on this. There we go. So your controlling or regulating process, this is going to show in a different way what controls each element. So this one's a little easier to understand, and this is the one I usually work with more. The nourishing one, I feel like it should be everyday knowledge. So the nourishing one, I feel the mother-child is something we should strive to do every day. So what nourishes what? Okay, my heart hurts today, so I need to nourish it with something that's going to fill it with good things. So I'm like, if my heart hurts today and I'm feeling a little grief, well, then I'm going to need to go outside and feel something else. So what do I need to bring in instead of grief? Love. So I'm going to focus on love for the day. I feel like the generational cycle is more of self-knowledge and knowing your body really well. But if someone came to me and they needed help with something, this is what I kind of go by, is this chart. Not everybody, it's just what I prefer. So water controls fire. If we put water on fire, it's out. Then wood is going to control earth. So wood, because it's got all the roots in the earth, is there. Fire controls metal. So if you put fire towards metal, it's going to heat up. If you do the earth controls water, so the earth is always holding water. It's always, everything is held by earth in the water, the ocean, lakes, everything. And then metal controls wood, because you can take anything metal and cut it into the wood and it's going to give it an issue. So they say an axe, but if you take metal to wood, you're going to start destroying it, start taking it down. So the metal can control the wood. This is all very deep Chinese medicine. It's not something that I'm saying after your yin training, go out and help people with Chinese medicine. I just want you to understand the elements of it a little different. Now, there's two different ways. So you got the generating, nourishing, and the controlling or regulating. Then as your organ relationships go, this is where I tell everybody, if you study this enough, this will help you, period. You don't need to know the other two cycles. I said it, and I say it proudly, because once you understand the elements, all you need to know is you'll be able to understand an element and look at someone and be like, whoo, they need a little more water in their life. Whoo, that person seems to attach to the metal element a little bit more. It's just like when you walk around and you understand Ayurveda. My favorite is how many Vata people I see when I'm out and about. I'm like, whew. I'm like watching people kind of like do their thing. But now with the Chinese medicine, you'll be able to kind of decipher that as well. So the water is represented by your kidneys and your bladder, which actually makes a lot of sense because that's where all of the fluid in your body goes into the kidneys to be filtered. Couldn't think of the word there for a second. And then once they filter it, it's going to send it out, all of the fluids that are no longer necessary that need to be released into the bladder. So, and then we're going to urinate it out. So that is all the water element. So the kidney is yin, and then the bladder is the yang part to it. The reason being is because the kidneys are super functional, but they do everything very quietly, as opposed to the bladder goes, hi, I'm full, I need to be released. That's a more active thing to help you remember the yin to the yang. Same thing with the wood element. Now you have wood, and it's liver and gallbladder. So your liver, same thing. Liver is the most important organ in your body. If you want it to be able to function correctly, if your liver is not functioning at 100%, we have some trouble because your liver actually does over 23 different functions for your human body. And I think a lot of people don't know that. That's why you'll hear me say to people all the time, have your fun, drink all you want. Don't do it every day. You gotta give your liver some time to rest. I'm not saying don't drink, but just don't do it on the daily because the liver needs time to relax. So, and after the liver is done, it sends it off to the gallbladder. How do we remember this as well? You don't ever feel your liver really. If there's something wrong with your liver, you're gonna feel it in your gallbladder. It's the more active, the one you're gonna feel more. Then you have your fire element, which is your heart and your small intestine. The fire element also talks about the triple burner and the heart protector. That's something I throw in there. I don't focus on it as much. We will go over it. But I want you to focus on heart and small intestine. So the heart is more of a yin. So quietly it functions on its own, does its own thing. But then it is connected to the small intestine. So a lot of people who tend to have heart issues sometimes have digestive issues as well. It can be linked to a certain point. But once again, the only time you're really going to feel your heart in your body is if you have palpitations. I can't say that word right now.
But I got it.
Like when your heart skips a beat.
Yeah.
That's the only time you're really going to feel your heart. But your small intestine, you're going to feel it. So you're going to feel things moving through and you're going to go, I don't feel very well. So that also will link you to if you have a fire imbalance, you tend to have stomach issues and you go to the bathroom a lot. So that's why it affects the small intestine. Then you have your earth, which is your spleen and your stomach. So your spleen is something that I know is removed on some people when they have issues, but you really don't feel it as much. And the one that you're going to feel more, that you'll probably get more of a, oh, something's off, your stomach. So you have the spleen and the stomach. Now, if your earth element's off, you're definitely going to feel it up here. Most people are always like, oh, right here, that's digestive. And so is the stomach, but the stomach's up here. So feeling it here versus here. Then the last element is your metal, which is the first one we're going to talk about. which is your lung and your large intestine. So the lung is more of the yin, and the large intestine is more of the yang. I'm going to give you a little hint here. In order to kind of remember these things, which is yin or yang, your yin kidneys or your yin organs, they can't be removed from the body. If they get removed from the body, you won't live. Now, can you take a little bit of the lung out? Yes. But Chinese medicine believes if you only live with one lung, that it is going to take half of what you could breathe away. So they think that you would not live as long. That is just something that they believe. If you look at all the yang, so your bladder, your gallbladder, your small intestine, the stomach and the large intestine, you can remove some of the intestines. So small and large right there, you can remove that stuff and you still can function fine. You can remove part of the stomach. If you notice, especially with like these surgeries, they shrink the stomach and everything else. That you can do. Gallbladder, people get it removed all the time. And the one other thing that's a little weird is the bladder. The bladder is not something you should remove, but I also know recently that there are kind of mesh things that they put into the bladder and that they can replace the bladder. It's something that is an organ that can be removed, and if they put something else in there, it's going to work. So that's kind of how I decipher from the yin and the yang. So think about it, because you can't live without your kidneys. You can have one, same with the lung, but they're going to tell you you're not going to have as long of a life. And then they have the liver, the heart, and the spleen. Obviously, the spleen could be removed as well, but Chinese medicine believes the spleen is super sacred. So the first thing I learned in Chinese medicine when she said, one thing I don't understand, yeah, I do her voice because she was my favorite person in the world. She goes, I do not understand. Spleen, multiple nutrients. And it stuck with me forever because I was like, nobody ever talks about what the spleen does. And she goes, it is literally jam-packed with nutrients. So when they take that away, people tend to go a little bit deeper. And she goes, if they take their spleen out, they're going to have stomach issues for the rest of their life. And she said, this is not something I wish upon anybody. It's just something that she used to see. So just keeping that in mind. Wonderful. All right. So like I said, 2 different types of diagnosis. They're going to check the tongue, and then they're going to ask you a bunch of questions about your internal and external environment. It is all going to count. And before they ask you the questions, which is the coolest thing if you can ever find a Chinese medicine practitioner, they don't want you to tell you what's wrong with them. They don't want to know. They're literally going to have you come in and go, okay, what are you here for? And I'll start going, well, my doctor, and they'll go, what's wrong? Point to it. And I got really weird at first, and I was like, oh, what does that mean? And I actually went in for asthma. So I said, I've been having some trouble breathing here. And she's like, mm-hmm. And I just looked at her, and I was like, okay. She said, come here. She sat me down, stared me straight in the eyes, and took my pulse. And as she took the pulse, she goes, okay, you've had asthma for blah, blah, blah. You also have stomach issues. And then she said, why is there no energy in your left shoulder? I did not tell her about my shoulder at all. Nobody really knew what was going on with it at that time. And right there, that woman won my respect. I don't know how she did it. And sometimes, you know, it's not that we need to know how, but she helped me heal on so many different levels, because it is not to be diagnosed. We are supposed to find the problem and then bring in an element to make it not be a problem anymore. So when it comes to your 5 elements, they're all going to be associated to different times of year, an element, and then a yin and a yang type of organ. Let me get the board out here. So, oh, I did earth. No, we're doing metal first because metal is what I am into right now. All right. So, our first element I'm going to talk about, and then I'm going to stop the recording and start a new one because apparently doing very long recordings is not my friend. It takes forever to download. So,
Okay.
we'll just come right back. But basically, we're going to do metal first. So, your metal element. Feeling good. And then I'll take a picture of this board because I know it's kind of hard to see right now. So you have your metal, which is going to be associated to your lungs and the large intestine. And just so you know, a lot of this stuff that I'm going to put on the board is what I sent you yesterday, those pictures. But I always, if you want to write down again, you sure can. So we want to think about the lungs as gold is a metal and it has a great value and strength. And it has been chosen as the element to represent the lungs and the large intestines. They too have a huge valuable role in Chinese medicine. The lungs, as you know, are our most important component because what's that? Breath. And in Chinese medicine, they believe the qi from heaven is received into the lungs. Same thing as Ayurveda. We bring the prana in to the lungs. So this is like their most valuable organ that they're most connected with. So universal qi, while the large intestine gets rid of everything that no longer is in value of the body. So it completes that cycle. So this brings in all the qi. And then your large intestine is going to release anything that no longer serves you. So anything that does not connect with the qi. So release of, we'll just put no qi. So basically anything that's in your body that doesn't need to be there. It's also metal is a great conductor for electricity, for heat, all of that good stuff. So, sorry, I got something in my throat. And also metal, magnets. I think I forget about that all the time. So metal, magnets are also part of it. So metal is amazing in the way that it can be melted to change form and be molded and then return to its original form if it wants to. So with metal, you can make it liquid and then you can bring it back to a solid, but you can also bend it into shapes. This property is very important in the metal element as it never loses its sense of self. So think back to science. You have a chunk of metal, if you melt it down and bring it back up, it's not going to lose any weight to that metal. It's also known for its strength, density, and precision, which makes it an excellent choice for why we use it for tools, for cutting, all of that. Ah, there we go. Here we go. This makes an excellent choice for use in very important jobs requiring strength, dependability, and longevity. Lungs have a very important job bringing us the rhythm of breath that we depend on every minute of every day. And this is why the metal element is so important, just like it would be in Ayurveda. If we're not breathing right, we're not getting rid of what we need to and bringing in what we need to. So metal energy allows flexibility when needed, especially in our belief system, so that harmony can exist in our inner and outer environment. Now that's kind of linking to like a chakra type thing, speaking our truth when it comes to that. But just a little side note, because we'll do a chakra workshop eventually one day too. So So having a life that has value, self-worth, flexibility, while still in harmony with the environment represents a healthy mental balance. Having a life of insecurities, rigidity, yes, and no self-worth is a sign of imbalance, which will also not permit the body to take in what it needs and eliminate what it doesn't want. So if we are in a place where we feel super secure, or we don't feel like we have our boundaries in place, that can affect this element as well. Good to go so far? Awesome. And just so you know, I will send you pictures of these because I have not put them in a PDF yet, but this is like all stuff that is handwritten and you're not gonna be able to read it. So, but I will give you the script to go along with what I'm saying because I'm a reader and a visualizer. I like them all, so. Now the part of the metal element, it's connected to the soul and they call it the corporal soul. So the physical body soul. So that is what exists between our first and last breath on earth. So how our breath allows us to connect with universal chi in our environment. This allows the sense of touch and smell to react with every nonverbal and non-conceptual way. An example of this and how certain smells can touch immediately and recreate a vivid memory from the past. So they're saying that it's a physical thing, like something physical, seeing something, smelling something is gonna bring back that whole memory for you. So this is part of the, this is like we're making a map, we'll say. So this is the corporeal soul. This is the physical body. All right. So they're talking about the physical part of the body. Now, the type of movement this energy has within the body. So it goes inward and downward. So think it goes, we breathe the chi into the lungs, it goes into the intestines, and then we release it. So the energy of this is inwards and downwards. So showing you the path of what this energy does in the body. Then the emotion that is attached is grief. I'll tell you right now, if someone told me they didn't have a lung imbalance in somewhere in their life, I would laugh. I would laugh hysterically because I'm like, you've never lost somebody you love?
You never loved, Ben.
Yeah, that's true. Then they never loved. You're right. You're right. So true. So it is grief. And how do we remember this? Because this element is attached to autumn. Fall. Am I not spelling that? Yeah. Autumn. No. Spell right. Yeah, I did. Wrong way. Yeah. All right. So autumn. So your fall. So for us in the United States here, fall is when we lose all of our leaves. Everything starts kind of dying off and just falling. So we start grieving, right? Oh, I love the summer. Why is everything dying? Okay. A lot of people get like that in the fall. Not me, I love the fall, but I'm just saying that's the time of year where everybody kind of gets attached to it. So autumn is the time of declining power or the approach of the end. This is when the metal element is fully embodied. You think about it. Well, I know with my area, I'm not sure what kind of elements you have in your time zone at that time, but I know in the fall, everybody gets upper respiratory infections. It's always the lungs that get affected. So to me, I'm like, oh, this is Chinese medicine. They're literally showing us. So keeping that in mind, in life, we tend to lose many things, such as our youth, your vigor, your strength, even physical things like hair. So it is time to find a strong, balanced sense of metal which means you can take any kind of sadness and turn it into wisdom eventually. So it has to do with, yes, you have to love. And if you do love, unfortunately, you're going to feel some grief. But you have two choices. You can live in that grief, or you can take the time to balance and go, what can I learn from this? Losing this, what can I learn? So people who have a strong balance in metal are gonna be able to kind of feel the experience, be mature about it, and eventually be able to kind of giggle at their experience, like, oh, I can't believe I did that to myself one day, you know, because we learned, we took the lesson and we learned. Someone who is not going to do that is still going to bring the same situation up. I know we all have people in our lives that like to talk about things that happened like, oh, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, and they still feel that it affects them today, which is fine. That's their own path. But they're going to keep making an imbalance in this part of their body. So anytime grief comes up, it's going to feel deeper than it would if we healed from our experience. So like I said, the balanced metal person does not eliminate grief, but allows it to pass and not hang on to it. And most importantly, gives us new hope for new opportunities in our life. So just because you lost something doesn't mean that something else doesn't need to be found. The beautiful path of life is we don't always get what we want, but we always get what we need. And I strongly say that because, you know, of course, you know, I want to be a millionaire. Okay, well, good for you. It might not be in your path because I say things like that, but I'm not all about money. So right there, I'm not aligning in my truth. Just a little example of something like that. Yes. When metal is in imbalance, so we can't let go of the grief, it eventually is going to turn into prolonged depression, or a melancholy. Someone who's just always like, not as much Eeyore, but kind of Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. They'll sound a little depressive. I won't say they sound groany like Eeyore, but they'll act like him, kind of walking around. Well, once that happens, and this is linked to stress and depression, you begin to have physical illnesses. Because if you stress or you have depression, you're not moving your body, you're sitting the same way, or you're laying down all the time, and you're not moving. So you're causing that energetic congestion in the body. It is only through grief that we can learn a deeper acceptance of life and death and regain ourselves back to the present time. Grieving itself is very, very healthy, and it is a natural process. So I'm not saying, oh my gosh, you feel grief, you're imbalanced in the lungs. No, you're feeling grief right now, and you know it's in the lung area, but if we work through it, it will eventually leave. Forgot that was on, my bad. So when we do not permit grief because we would seem less than perfect, so this is also for our emotional stuffer friends, acting like they're fine when they're not. This is also something that they're going to do. And what they need to do, so when they start doing that, they're going to be giving themselves an overwhelming depression in that area. Because if you hide your grief from people, that's actually saying you don't feel like you can be yourself around somebody. And everybody has grief, so we should be able to accept someone when they're having it. You don't need to coddle them or help them through it, but hold space at least, because we've all been there. So, there we go, perfect. So yes, my emotional stuffers, I will say that they usually have an imbalance in the metal, but it'll relate to another element in a little bit as well. The sense that they use for metal, how you sense things, are through the nose. So the nose is the sensory for this. So, and we know this because we breathe in through the nose. Well, we're supposed to breathe in through the nose. So your nose takes it in down to the lungs, and then it lets it go in the large intestines. So the nose connects us to our environment by the sense of smell. The olfactory bulb connects to the part of the brain where the emotional and instinctual responses happen. When the lungs are not in a healthy condition, neither are the nose or nasal passages, which would make sense. You can see this connection with the colds, flus, allergies. Yes, you can get rid of allergies, just so you know. Sinuses, sneezing, and anything that has to do with the nasally. So if like you have like I think sleep apnea, they connect with this as well because it has it to do with their deviated septum. So taking that in, so your sensory, so the nose. So if you're someone who gets allergies a lot, we got to check this out. I'm not saying if you get seasonal allergies for a day or two and then your body adjusts, that's normal. That's letting your body do what it needs to do. But if you have allergies for weeks, for days that go on, or you just know you're going to be sick for 2 months out of the year, that's an imbalance. That's not allergies. That's something saying that there's something in your body not able to heal on its own. You can be allergic to cats and dogs and things like that, absolutely. But here's the thing, people will even say they can't even be in that space. Well, it's because they have mentally told themselves that they can't be, number one, and number two, just knowing that they need to not be near it. So cleaning your hands or things like that, be knowledgeable that maybe your system can't break that stuff down as much. The color with metal is white. So white is also associated for mourning in China. So metal is represented by white because it is a deficiency. If you don't have a lot of qi in your system, and we'll know this as well, you don't got a lot of qi and you're sick, you turn pale, you get all white. So that's why they associate with that color. The sound is weeping. And the reason why we say a sound, because you can kind of tell something about somebody if their voice changes. So think about it. Weepy, I don't feel good. Well, that's what they're going to sound like, especially in this area. They're going to sound weepy, nasally, things like that. So their voice is very whiny, and they're complainers. They love to complain. The smell of someone with a metal imbalance, they're going to smell rotten. Now, I'm not saying that you can always sense all of these different things on someone. You're not always going to be like, oh, check your nose. Oh, what do you smell like? Not always that. But if someone in passing had a weird smell to them, you'd be like, that's interesting. That could be an imbalance. It becomes rotting because think about what I said. The large intestines allows the things not of energetic vibration to release. We keep that all inside, it's going to sound like we're smelling rotting on the inside. The taste is pungent. And I can vouch for this. So people who love their strong taste, raw garlic, strong cheeses, like things that most people are like, ooh, I can't take that smell. Those people with the metal, they like that kind of stuff. So, or they'll get more attracted to it. And I will tell you, if I have breathing issues or I can tell something's going on with my sinuses and lungs, the first thing I do is eat garlic. Because I know the metal element likes that. Then the season, like I said, is autumn. And then the climate. So in China, it's a dry season, which would make total sense as why it would affect the respiratory and the lungs as well. And I would say it's probably the dry season for us as well. Not sure about your time zone and things like that, but just think that they're coming off that ideology from what it's like in China. Now, my favorite part of Chinese medicine, the time of day that this organ will function and heal and release. So that little chart I sent you last night of the clock, every hour there is a certain element that is getting healed or working on, which I think is interesting. So I don't know if you're into what people call the bewitching hour. So there's a bewitching hour at 3 a.m. for people where they say the spirits get most active. Well, your lungs start at 3 a.m. and that is your immediate connector to spirit. So to me, I was like, whoo, connector right there, makes total sense. So from 3 to 5 a.m., if you are strongly connected and they're trying to speak to you, people can tend to wake up at 3 a.m. But also people who have lung issues will either sleep super deep through this time so their lungs can heal, or they'll get woken up to say, hey, you keep getting woken up at this time, what's going on? So if you're someone that during an hour, the time during the day that you like associate with, or you feel tired through, or you know you're tired at every time this day, this clock's going to allow you to go, okay, well the lungs are working at that time. So let me look this up. What do I think's going on? So your lungs are from 3 to 5 a.m. and then your large intestines are right after. So your body only heals when it's sleeping. This is a famous one for everybody. Your body is not going to heal if you are not sleeping. You want to lose weight? You have to sleep. People look at me and they're like, oh, I love napping. No, 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 no. You need to healthily have a good night's sleep. If you can sleep your solid 7 to 9 hours a night, you're giving your body enough time to recalibrate and heal itself. So that's why in also Ayurveda, the first thing they tell you in the morning is to get up and release your bowels and start your practice. Well, that's perfect because the large intestines is between 5 and 7 a.m., right around sunrise when you would start doing your yoga practice traditionally. So all of it is definitely interconnected. So lungs is, 3 to 5 a.m., and this is 5 to 7 a.m. So according to the Chinese, in the early morning hours, the first thing we should do is breathing, breath work, lung exercises. The first thing they recommend. Man, I was born in the wrong part of the world. Anyway. So, and then defecate, like I just said. Get up, do your practice, and then you're going to be able to go to the bathroom, whatever you need to do. The early morning can clearly be a problem for asthmatic people. And for those who wake up feeling a sense of doom between 4 and 5 a.m. from clinical depression. So people who have insomnia tend to be linked to depression as well. So this is just letting us know that there's a metal imbalance. Now, if you're someone who just wakes up randomly at a certain time, you can still check the element out and be like, ooh, they're trying to let me know that. Perfect. But it's not something that if someone is not sleeping during normal sleeping hours, it can affect them. This is why I'm not a huge fan of night shift for people, because they should totally be letting their body rest in the most important time of day, and they're working through it. And that's why they tend to get a little out of balance. Now, your body will eventually recalibrate, but it's going to take some time, for sure. Let's see, what else? What else I got? Okay. All right, we went over that. We went over the movement, what kind of deficiency, so shortness of breath, any kind of weakness. And like I said, the lungs are the closest thing to getting chi from the heavens. So just think breath work when it comes to the lungs. So sore throats, coughs, tickly throats, and also, fun fact, I don't usually go over this, you've got skin issues. So if someone has like, not pimples or things like that, like eczema or psoriasis, it's connected to a lung imbalance because they're not bringing in enough chi to nourish their physical body. So sometimes if you do have some things on your skin, it can be related to lungs as well. I just wanted to throw that in there. Yeah, all right. And the other thing to know is that I know anxiety can be related to different parts of the body, depending on what's talking to you, but they say that the anxiety can start in your intestines. So if your intestines aren't able to digest for you and release, that can cause a different kind of anxiety in the body when people are like, I don't know, I'm just anxious. I don't have anything to be anxious about. That could be related to that as well. All right. Perfect. All right. Any questions about the lungs and the large intestine?
No. All good.
Good.
All good.
All good.
Everything.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So I like to just kind of like throw a lot of stuff at you. So I know that we seem like we're going through this in real time very quickly. But after I go through this and you read through it, it's a lot more hours than you think. So just because we're doing this stuff now, because people are like, how do you get through 60 hours? I actually did the course on my own, and it ended up taking me 75 hours. So I had to cut some things out. So, and that included the reading and just doing my own notes, because I want you to be able to take that time to interpret whatever you want to interpret it into. All right. How am I doing? You know what? I'm going to keep recording for 2 hours. We're fine.
Yeah?
We're going to go till,
Okay.
yeah, we'll be fine to record for 2 hours. And then we'll take a break and I'll just take a potty and then we'll meet back. All right.
Okay.
So next element we're going to go through. You're going to hear me talk like this because it's the earth element. And the way that I get people to remember the earth element. You ever watch Snow White?
I knew that. Because you remind me her right now.
So, well, thank you. That is such a compliment. I got to be honest. So when it comes to the earth element, they have a singy, songy voice to them. So let me make sure I said that right before I get all excited. Yes. So these are the people that sound like they're always telling a lullaby, or they can make anything into like a magical type thing. I love Snow White. So the reason why I say that is because it's also thinking about how earthly she is. She was connected to the animals, you know, she connected to people very easily. I mean, we won't get into the 7 dwarfs because I still think that's weird, but that's fine. But she's stable and she's supportive. So the earth element is going to be represented by our spleen and our stomach. We'll just put this so I have it in. Okay. So it's all about nourishment when it comes to earth elements. So you'd be able to pick out a guy who is strong in earth very easily because it is kind of uncommon. This is more of a female that is going to be more associated with the earth element because we're nurturers. It's just natural. Not to say that guys aren't earthly on their own, the earth element on their own. But it is stable and supportive as well as providing nourishment. So think Mother Earth, basically. So fertility of the mind and the spirit. I'm sorry, mind and the body. So the earth element comes from yin quality of receptiveness. If the earth is unable to receive everything, it will lose its ability to be fertile. So what it's saying is if we have this beautiful gift of the earth, if we keep taking from it and not putting it back, it will be destroyed. That's kind of what they're getting to on there. So when the earth element allows things to be received, then it can be nourished and it'll become fertile. So with new growth, which will turn nourished into nourishment for everybody on earth. So these are the people that probably walk around with snacks in their bag all the time, asking you if you're okay, if you need anything. You know, it's okay to ask once or twice. They'll be out of balance when they ask you 17 times. You don't need anything? You sure? So that's having too much earth element, so excessive. The earth element deeply represents our ability to receive, process, and give out again on all levels. So physical, emotional, intellectual, any type of level. So the earth element is me at this point, probably because I'm all about that even energy exchange. You got to do it. I can give you, I can help you. I will do what I need to do, but you got to give something back or it's going to drain me. So the relationship with the person you know as mother profoundly affects the earth meridian within you. So if you have mom issues or mom strains in your life, that can also cause an imbalance in your earth element because mothers become strong in this, even if it's out of balance. So whether they're They kind of push away from being too motherly, or they get overly motherly. So think about that kind of element. Same with guys. So it's more like guys who always tell you what to do or what you should be doing. That's not good. All of that. So the spirit part of this is intellect. Because I can't spell today. All right, so intellect. So this represents the earth's spiritual capacity as it serves the purpose of our heart mind, which is the fullest human potential. And by heart mind, I mean your heart and your mind got to be aligned. I'm actually writing that down because that's very important in the earth. So heart and mind must be aligned. And if your heart and mind are aligned, what can happen? Manifesting like a boss. So if you can get this earth element down, you'll understand what that means. So it's like taking that and bringing it to the fullest potential. So having your heart and mind aligned and not letting anybody deter that or shake it. So intellect will offer options and choices for transformation for the richest good of the earth. So people are always like, oh, I wanna get big, I wanna do stuff, I want this, I want that, I want that, I want this. Well, that's great, but you gotta give back and nourish something in order to ask for something. You can't just ask and spiritually demand for stuff if you're not willing to do any work for it. That's just the way of the world. So it's like those people who are just like, my favorite example, my girlfriends do this to me all the time. I just want to meet somebody. And my response is, well, you have to leave the house. You can't just sit here and manifest a person and say that you want that, but then you make no effort to go out there. It doesn't work like that. You have to show some type of action with it. So when the earth element is deficient, people tend to think too much. And then they deplete their stomach and their spleen. So overthinking, so worrying, stress, things like that. So, right. Yeah, perfect. All right. So the movement of the earth element is stillness. So go sit your butt in nature, because that's exactly what we need to do. So stillness. Taking our moments in nature or meditation. A sitting meditation, I should specify. So stillness is how the earth is always going to feel, even though it's in rotation. Even though the earth is always moving, the trees don't move with it, the water stays, we don't move with the rotation. The earth does that on its own, and we feel stillness. We cannot feel that earth move. When the earth element is deficient, oh, I'm sorry, wrong line. The earth is supposed to make us feel grounded, calm, connected. And when we do that, we're going to feel nourishment. So when we feel grounded, this is when the earth element is going to connect with us the most. A lot of people aren't very grounded, as we know. That's why we do the yoga, or why a lot of people do the yoga. So when they're out of balance and are in the earth element, they're going to feel lethargic. They're going to feel like they don't have any purpose, and they're just going to overreact and overthink in their head. They're not going to make any movement. They're going to go still, but not a healthy still. It's good to have stillness throughout the day, but we also need to move and make our motion happen as well. And just so you know, as there's stillness and they get in their head, so the emotion is directly linked to, they have reflective thoughts. And there it is, the word. Here it is, nice and big. Empathy. Mm-hmm. That's how you know you're a good earth element, man. Got to stay grounded even though you feel everybody's energy. And it's a lot harder to do than people think. So being able to give and receive is a important piece of the earth element. If the earth is imbalanced, then no one can give too much and they're unable to receive anything back. So if they keep taking from the earth, which is, we know a lot of people do, take, eventually the earth is like, I ain't got nothing left for you. I can only do so much. If you want to take from me, then you better plant what you want to put back. It's like the story of the Lorax with Dr. Seuss. I love it. You don't go in and do anything, and if you don't care about it, no one else is going to care. So if you keep taking and you destroy land, it'll come back to you some way if you're not going to put anything back. The element associated with earth kind of trips people up, but it's yellow. Yellow is the color to earth in China, which represents peace and substance. I'm sorry, substance and abundance. I tried to say the two words together. So yellow, if you notice, and I can say this, in China, they love their yellow and their red. You're going to see a ton of yellow and red. So they bring in the fire element and a lot of the earth. So and the reason why they bring in a lot of yellow is because of the peace and abundance factor that the energy brings in. A yellowish hue around the eyes or the mouth, so jaundice-like elements, is showing an earth imbalance. So if the overall skin turns orange or yellow, the whole body, then we're a little bit deeper into it and there's too much dampness in the earth. And if there's too much dampness, we need to put more earth in there to absorb the water. So just thinking like element-wise, things we learned in science a very long time ago. Empathy, the sound, like I said, we're singing and we love it, yeah. So they're gonna sound like they're singing, but it's a soothing kind of singing. This is why when you get my videos, people just want me to do a million meditations and they just love listening to my voice when I do get into meditation mode. And it's because I am very strong in this element. I can get my voice into a place where you're just like ready to bliss out. There are some people who are not built to do meditation. Their voice is just not there for it. I'm sure you've been through some videos where you're like, yep, not a voice for me. Nope, can't do that. It's not bringing in the right vibe, which is correct. So we need to pull more of this earth element in to get that soothingness into it, because once you get the soothing, it doesn't need to be singy-songing, but it'll just be comforting. So like what a mother would do, talk to you real slow to comfort you and to bring you in, type things like that. So people, those who have singing in their voice permanently reflect that their main source of communicating is empathy, which I totally get. Because you know, people who like to like walk away, it's because it's too much. And that's the reaction. It sounds like they're singing a little. They're like, and they walk away. Not a laugh. They're uncomfortable. And there's too much empathy in the room for them. I wouldn't know anything about that either, would you, right? So the odor from people, which I can vouch for this as well, oddly enough, our fragrance that comes off of our body naturally is sweet. I've actually had people say this to me. They're like, your BO is like not, and I said, I know, it wasn't like this forever. But I said, now it's got like kind of a sweet thing that like, if I forget to put deodorant on, I'm not gonna notice till like the end of the day, as opposed to before when I had a different smell to me when I was going through some stuff and on medicine. I would forget deodorant. An hour later, I'm like, I'm going home. It smells that bad. So that is a huge indicator as well. It's just like when you're walking through a crowd and you smell someone or something and you're like, ooh, yeah, that's an imbalance most of the time. But the smell is definitely going to be a little fragrant. So this is the most appealing of all of the smells of the elements. The smell only shows up when there is disharmony, meaning it's going to be sickly, sickly sweet. Like you smell like a flower. That's not normal at all. So that's also showing an over excessiveness in the earth in the body. The sense organ that we use, or the sense here, is the mouth. The mouth serves us as a vehicle to receive food and its relationship to the readiness to go into the stomach, the spleen into the stomach. So think nourishment of the body. Mouth problems, ulcers, cold sores, bleeding gums, or losing your sense of taste. So like getting sick like that and not having any taste in your mouth. Those are all signs of disharmony in the earth element as well. Taste is the sweetness. It's one of my faves. So they're gonna go for the sweets. Yeah. I love my donuts. So the sweetness is a natural sugar and is burned at a very, very slow rate, giving us a long-lasting physical energy. The expression of the sweetness of earth. When the stomach and spleen are in balance, we will crave sweets. Refined sugars can cause a faster imbalance as they burn faster than natural sugars. Alcoholism can stem from a sugar addiction as well. Just a side note. So this is also directly linked to, I say this to people all the time. People are like, I can't help it, I crave sugar constantly. And I say, you need to ground yourself. If they're craving sugar constantly, they need grounding. So it definitely, like people who crave certain things. Some people are sugar people, some people are salty, some people like hot stuff, just depending on that. So if you have a sugar addiction, we got to work in this earth element, and it's a strong grounding that you need. The season is late summer, which is the stillness in the seasons. So late summer, as it falls into the next feeling of change. So late summer is like that Indian summer. So like August and September type thing before we go directly into fall. Some also believe that the last 10 days of all seasons are earth related, as they again are still before preparing for the next change of season, which would make sense. So a little bit of earth comes in before anything changes because we need grounding before change. Illness symptoms will be worse at this time for those with long-term stomach or spleen imbalances. So people who have stomach issues, related issues, they're gonna feel it more in the late summer, about to go into the fall, thinking it's grieving or depression because it starts in the stomach, and then it's gonna move most likely. The climate is dampness. So, and that's a very yin quality. It is because the earth is continually taking in moisture. So bringing in that cycle. So internal and external dampness can exist in the body and affect the spleen. And by external dampness, I mean somebody who sweats for no reason. They're just constantly sweating. And that does include people who are constantly perspirating from their armpits. Because I remember when we were younger, you get embarrassed. Oh, I have pit stains, I'm sweating too much. You actually have an imbalance and we need to figure it out. There is a ton of lymph nodes in that area as well. Now, the time of day for your stomach is going to be 7 to 9 a.m. So when you should be eating breakfast or about to eat breakfast, something like that. And then your spleen is going to be from 9 to 11 a.m. So everything's going to transfer and then get down into the intestines eventually. Our bodies digest the best in the morning. So people who don't like to eat in the morning, they have an earth imbalance. If you don't have an appetite in the morning for anything, you definitely have an earth imbalance. This is why I tell people all the time. They say, I I don't like to eat. I'm not hungry in the morning. I'm like, okay, well, you should be. You should wake up the next day and want to eat something. You just slept for 8 or 9 hours. Your body should be hungry. This is also going to link to, this is a side note, weight gain. So for a lot of people who don't eat in the morning, you're not kickstarting your metabolism. You're not getting everything going. So people who tend to, I'm not talking about fasting because I know people fast every once in a while. That's fine. But on every day, you should be having some kind of breakfast by 9 a.m. If you're not, and you start eating later in the day and then you eat your dinner, you're not giving your body the proper time to go through the cycle that it needs to go through. Everybody is different, like meaning everybody's physical body is different, but not in this sense. So it's like people, like I said, those overnight shifts, they're eating all through the night when they should be sleeping. So it's almost like their internal clock has got to flip, and it can, but it's going to take months. And most of the time they're ready to leave that job and then they got to start all over again. So let me see here. My favorite example is farmers. So the farmers follow the earth cycle to a T, So they have their heartiest meal for breakfast, which most of us have a very small breakfast and then have a heartiest meal at dinner. Here's the thing. I can say you can do that, like if that's how your body is, because I know a lot of people like to eat their big meals at night. It's fine as long as you stop eating by like 9 p.m. But then you do want to make a balance and make sure when you eat in the morning, knowing you had a big meal the night before, just make your meal a little smaller the next day so your body can digest what you had last night, and then you still kickstart it to have the metabolism going during the day. This is one big thing. That's why I tell people when they ask me for advice to lose weight and things like that, I say, you're not going to do what I did. I mean, I used to feed myself when I wasn't hungry, and trying to eat when you're not hungry is one of the hardest things to do, in my personal opinion. So I tell people the farmers do a different thing. So back in the day, they would get up at sunrise. So they would usually be up by like 4:30. And then they would they would go out and do their thing and come back and have breakfast at like 5:30. So they would eat right at 5:30 like they were supposed to. Then they would go work for a little bit and they would come back for a second meal around 9 a.m. So these guys have already had 2 meals in the morning time when their body is functioning the best to release that stuff. And then you'll notice with them, they have probably a decent sized lunch, probably around 1 or 2 on their lunch break. But when they come home for dinner, they'll eat, but not as much as they did during the day. And sometimes they'll even snack at night. Now, for some reason, after all my research, they seem to be the healthiest people, farmers, because that's their routine and that's what they do. Your body is naturally supposed to wake up with the sun and naturally go to bed with the sun. And that's what they do. So most farmers are in their bed or into relaxation mode, about to go to sleep by 7 or 8 p.m. And sometimes they'll even wake up for, that's where that expression came, a midnight snack. That came from farmers. So they would go to sleep maybe, and because they did so active, they had their dinner at like 5. At midnight, it's been 7 hours. So their body is like, we need a little snacky poo. Now, do they pig out? No, but they'll get up and eat a snack and go right back to bed. And it does not affect them. So that's why the midnight snacking came about. Not because we were drinking or just felt like eating in the middle of the night, things like that. Yeah, it just says, my last thing I wrote in here, encourage, encourage, encourage. So encourage yourself to eat some type of breakfast, even if it has to start small for a little bit until you're able to kickstart it and have a big meal for the day. Here we go. The spleen, it processes and transports food and fluids. So the purest part of the food is turned into food chi. That's what they call it. So if you're eating the right things, you're nourishing your body correctly. If it is not something that nourishes you, that's when we expel it from the body. Lack of appetite is also a spleen imbalance. So it's really more from the spleen than it is from the stomach. So it starts there. So if you're someone who never has an appetite, we're not grounded, we're not doing our earth element, we're not sticking our feet in the dirt. We need to do more of the grounding. If the spleen is not able to transform food like it's supposed to, this is where you'll start feeling tired, sluggish, like you're not digesting certain foods, or you'll feel discomfort after you eat. Like you just feel like you're like, ugh, like in pain almost. Like it's just not an enjoyable experience. So also, what else is there? Constipation can be related to that, and constipation and loose stools. So you either get constipated or you'll be going too much. So either one could be connected to the spleen or an earth imbalance as well. Let's see. It's great. Spleen, yeah, we know. Little fun fact about the spleen. I always have these little asterisks and stuff. So even though we're talking about the internal thing, you can tell if someone has a spleen imbalance by their lips. Their lips will be dry, maybe cracked a little, or they'll be pale. So they look like their lips are melting into their skin type thing, or their mouth is looking a little pale. Let's see. Eating disorders are also related to the earth element. So people who tend to have bulimia or anorexia, so they're saying they have no appetite and they're going to take it to a whole new level type thing. But purging is also part of this. So because it is related to the stomach and spleen, when they go to purge, it's coming directly out of their stomach because it hasn't reached anywhere else yet. Then after that happens, so think about an eating disorder, if you're not nourishing your body, you're eventually going to feel very fatigued and possibly go into anemia. So like not any iron is in your body. So this spleen is a blood producing organ. So it brings nutrients to your blood. If the spleen is not healthy, we're not putting all those nutrients we need to put into the blood that actually help us battle our everyday things that we come in contact with. We probably come in contact with more viruses and things that none of us will ever know, but our human body is so cool that it can transfer and get that all into energy for ourselves. There we go. The spleen, the actual meridian, also it goes through our breast line. So it's like, I think it's on this side. So it goes through the breast. So if you do have an imbalance in the spleen and it's in this area, it can affect eventually the reproductive, meaning your menstruation. So if your spleen is a little off, it can definitely give yourself some menstruation pains or like weird pings that you feel down there. That's if it gets too deep, it'll start spreading into other areas. Then the stomach. So still the same thing. You're going to see some loose stools if they're out of balance in their stomach area, and they're not going to be able to digest their food. This is a big thing. I hear people, you know, I call them my poop checker friends, who every time they go, they check it, which you should, honestly. But I have them all say to me, not just corn, because I know corn is always the one that people go to when they talk to me. But some people will be like, dude, I ate fajitas last night and I literally see all the vegetables. That's a problem. So if your body's not digesting vegetables, there's something going on. I'm sure it didn't digest anything else either. You just can't see it because there's other things covered in it. So I tell people that you really want to check yourself out, because it's not like I want you to check it all the time. But if you're having undigested food come out, something's not right. Your body should be able to break down almost anything. So they call it stomach fire. So think about if you ignore it enough, there's a fire that will develop in the stomach. So it also almost becomes a fire imbalance as well. But basically, it'll become overactive and you'll see they worry all the time. They start pouring their heart into their work. They have emotional issues. They're not able to eat hot foods because it immediately makes them hot everywhere else and they get sick. Let's see. Ooh, bad breath is related to this as well. So someone who brushes their teeth and still has bad breath, definitely an earth imbalance. And then also, if you have an excessive appetite, so either non-existent or all you do is eat. So it's like the one extreme to the other. And the movement, I believe, I think I forgot that part. Hold on. I did. Oh, stillness, I was going to say. Well, that's what I said. All right. Just making sure we got everything else. If your chi seems rebellious in the stomach area, meaning it doesn't know what's going on or doesn't want to have the chi, you're going to see an energetic hiccup, and it's going to manifest as regular hiccups. So that is also related. So hiccups, nausea, and vomiting as well is just saying that the chi is not being able to get all the way into the stomach. So it's like a warning sign, like, hi, something's going on down here. Give me a minute. So the stomach needs fluid, but the spleen hates dampness. The kidneys are known as the gateway to the stomach as they supply the needed fluids. Heat in the stomach show up in the mouth as ulcers, cold sores, bleeding, or swelling in the gums as well. They're in charge, both are in charge of processing the logical mind and intellect, as well as processing the food and fluids as well. So whatever it's doing emotionally and mentally, it's doing internally as well. People who are incredible givers usually have an extreme difficulty taking anything or receiving. That's an earth imbalance. I was very guilty of this for a very long time. And like I said, just the overthinking, and then also it can relate to irregulates your menstrual cycle. So if someone starts getting, they're not their usual every 28 days or things like that, that's kind of where they're going to go. So that's going to be more of the deeper problem because it's eventually going to get there, but it always does start in the stomach or in the spleen area. So the body type of an earth person are curvy and fleshy, and they seem to be like heavy type thing. I wouldn't say that's 100% true, but if there's an imbalance, they can look like that. As my teacher told it, she's like, it's like a Humpty Dumpty. And I almost lost it because I knew exactly what kind of body type she was talking about. So just so you know, it's just that kind of element as well. And hold on, I think I have that. And just to go back to the middle, they're very straight built and like lanky looking, and they've got angular limbs and things like that. So long limbs, usually thin in build. So metal people are pretty thin in build, and then the earth people are curvy and round. And then just to reiterate and give a little summary of what we went over, you don't have to write this down because I'm pretty sure you have it all. I'm just reading off the sheet for the future class. So your earth is element related to the spleen from 9 to 11 a.m. and the stomach from 7 to 9 a.m. The spleen is also your pancreas, just so we know, like same related element. The color is yellow, which is peace, contentment, and abundance. The season is late summer, or also known as the Indian summer, so harvest time. So nurturing of the earth before we get all the crops out. The emotion, worry. All I do is worry. But when you're not worrying, you have an immense amount of compassion. The sound is singy, songy like Snow White. Your taste is sweet. Sweet. The odor is fragrant, where it's sickly sweet when it's too much. The sense organ is the mouth and the lips and the whole oral cavity. So, but does not include the tongue. They use that for diagnosis, like I said earlier. The climate is dampness and humidity. So if you're someone who doesn't like humidity, we got an earth imbalance for sure. Humidity is going to make them immediately. The movement is stillness, but it's still grounding energy. So technically it's downward, but that's just pulling us to the gravity. Then if you are yin deficient, you have all this. I sent this to you, just so you know. If you're yin deficient, you're always looking for support from everybody. You don't have any self-esteem. You can't take care of yourself. You get very clingy to people. You crave attention. There's disconnection, and you never feel like you're ever somewhere that feels like home. If you have too much yang in the earth element, you're going to be off center. You're going to be nosy, maybe even gossipy. Smothering, very smothering to people. And you're going to meddle. And like we said, worry. Worry, worry, worry is the number one. And then you're going to crave your sugar. You might even have a pity party for yourself all the time. And you're going to feel the need to be codependent. So it's not like you're going to ever want to be alone. But if you're imbalanced, you're a caring type of person. You're sympathetic. You're compassionate. Your empathy is on point. You're serene. You're stable. You're able to meditate and drop into that space. And home is within. You know home is here, and you're going to feel home anywhere. So that is the earth element. The yellow earth element. I want to say it's green all the time, and I know it's not. So, all right. And then I am going to do the nice recap for metal as well, which the worksheet you got, but just so we have everything in this one video. Then to go over to the metal elements, you have your metal, which is your lung and your large intestine. So the lung is from 3 to 5 a.m. and the large intestine is from 5 to 7 a.m. The color is white. The season is fall. The emotion is grief, contentment. The sound is weepy and nasally. Taste is pungent. So think about our wasabi, our garlics, things like that. The odor is rotten, not too great. So your sense organ is obviously related to the nose. The climate for metal is dry, and the movement is in, down, and inward. Sorry, down and inward. So into the lungs, keeping all the chi there. Their body type is, do you know who Larry King is by any chance?
No.
Okay, I'll send you a picture of him, but he's very lanky. So he's just like a lot of limb and real skinny. So he's like my best depiction of what a metal body type would be like. I'm trying to think if I can think of anybody else off the top of my head, but he was literally my favorite. I was like, Larry King when I thought it. And everybody's like, yes. So he has like the strong shoulders, but they look like a T.
Let me see. I'm gonna look for him.
Yeah. Woo. Knocking over my board, getting too excited. All right. Then when it comes to metal, if you are yin deficient, you're going to feel insecure. Your morality is going to go out the window. You're just going to do whatever you feel like doing. You're unable to adapt in situations. So you're not going to be able to kind of fit in places. You're going to feel very full of sorrow, doubt yourself. You're going to come off very sloppy and disorganized. Apathy. So very numb, like I don't care about your stuff type thing. So kind of cold in a way. Elusive, like drawn inward and don't really want to associate with anybody else. And you become reliant on others. So even to get out of your yin deficiency, you're going to need someone to pull you out of it. Now, if you have too much of the metal and it's yang excessive, you're going to be super critical of people. You're going to tend to be a perfectionist for yourself. Judgment is going to be the best game of your day, basically. You're just going to judge everybody. You're going to have prejudice upon your mind. You're going to be very rigid and controlling, so like a control freak. And then a know-it-all attitude. Very matter of fact. So that is when there's too much. But when people with the metal are in balance, they're very optimistic, they're neat, they're orderly, high values, their morality is on point, they have structure, organization, they're private and more introverted, but can definitely be around people when they need to. They appear aloof. I love that word. So they're just aloof, they're just there, just kind of hanging, like minding their own business type thing. They are thinkers, so they'll get very analytical, so that's why they tend to get very quiet. not overthinking, but they analyze their situations and like to read the room. They're very calm and honorable, and you can't fluff them. So like if they're strong in their belief system and they know what they want, they're good. They're like, that's cool that you believe that. I don't, but we can still be friends. So that would more be like a metal element, which I love. I love metal people because they are very, very, very honest when they're in balance, for sure. So, whew, all right. Whew, feeling good. All right, metal and earth. 2 out of the 5 done. So what I will do is it's 11:52 now. I'm just gonna take a 15-minute break so I can go potty, get my station set up. And then if you would like, I wanna start with, we're gonna do asana workshops, take a little break so we can move a little bit. So we'll go into asana and we'll do that for a little bit. And then we'll jump back into the elements after that, just to give you an idea of where we're gonna go today.
Okay.
All right, cool. So I'll send you a link in about 15 minutes and then we'll get started again.
Okay. See you
All right,
later.
sounds good. Bye.